Doc Rivers, color commentator on the number one NBA booth, was pulled out of the booth to coach the Milwaukee Bucks after the Bucks canned their head coach in just 43 games. And then Joel Embiid missed his third or fourth straight meeting against Nikola Jokic in Denver, making the streak something like 1,300 games in which he's um, since he's played a game in Denver. And these two should be ashamed of themselves. And it's not Doc Rivers and Embiid that should be. I'll talk about that in a second. First of all, I want to apologize. Lack of uploads, and my voice probably sounds awful on this video. A little bit under the weather. So I'm hoping that it doesn't sound too bad. But I wanted to get on and get a video out there. And I'm talking about two big things today. First, on Joel Embiid, because I think that's a shorter conversation. Listen, at the end of the day, injuries happen, and I'm not going to say Joel's not hurt. That's ridiculous. But the NBA has an interesting situation where, unlike football, in my opinion, which each game is so important in football, the NBA has a lower threshold for, or I should say, a lower tolerance, or I guess a higher tolerance, should I say, for I don't know how to phrase this. I'm struggling today, in case you can't tell, as I mentioned, under the weather. But what I want to say is that NBA games mean less. And so players are going to play in football with certain injuries where they may not play in the NBA because it's one of 82 as opposed to one of 17. So that's part of the problem. The other part of it is that the NBA is so star driven. And so you have a rivalry week. That's what this week was, NBA rivalry week. And some of the matchups were just based on teams, right? You have the Knicks and the Nets played on the 23rd, right? That's New York versus Brooklyn, right? A rivalry. Lakers versus Clippers, both LA teams played on the 23rd. You have various ones that are that kind of thing, where they're historical team-based rivalries. You had the Celtics versus the Heat, but you had several of them that were player versus player, and some of which the NBA is kind of trying to push a little bit and encourage because they know rivalries are good for the league. But you had the Phoenix Suns versus the Dallas Mavericks, right? Devin Booker and Luka Doncic are certainly rivals. You had the Thunder versus the Spurs with Chet and Wemby competing for the Rookie of the Year. Um, and then you had the 76ers and Nuggets and Lakers and Warriors tonight. Lakers and Warriors, of course, LeBron versus Steph once again. But the 76ers and Nuggets were the last two MVPs, the two best centers in the league, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, that were supposed to go against each other, and Joel Embiid is out of the game. Kind of ruins the punctuation mark that was supposed to come at the end of rivalry week. And we ended up getting that with the Lakers and the Warriors with their double overtime thriller and LeBron dropping 20 rebounds and 36 points or something like that. It just kind of takes some of the punch out of it. And so when I say you should, someone should be ashamed of themselves, it's not Embiid. It's kind of the NBA because they got to figure this out. And I know this is not load management, right? And at the end of the day, if Joel Embiid misses something like six more games, he's not eligible for any awards at the end of the season. So I severely doubt that he's missing this game on purpose. But it just kind of sucks for their promotion, right? Everything has Embiid and Jokic on it, and I mean, B-ball Paul Reed played well in Embiid's absence, but he's no Joel Embiid. So I think it just kind of sucks. I don't know. But the one that I think is a little more spicy, a little more controversial is the Doc Rivers situation. So Adrian Griffin was let go. I don't remember what their records were. Let me pull that up. The Bucks were 32 and 13. So 690, no, 700 winning percentage. Second seed in the East, just 2 or 3 games behind the Boston Celtics. Adrian Griffin just brought in this year after the Bucks let go of Mike Budenholzer after they lost in the first round of the Miami Heat last year. Of course, Giannis was hurt for part of that, and Mike Budenholzer lost his brother during that series. So there was a lot going on. To start, Mike Budenholzer brought them a title, and if he didn't bring the Milwaukee Bucks a title, I think they would have fired him after 2021. I don't think Budenholzer was that great of a head coach, but it's clear Adrian Griffin was not the right choice for the Bucks right now. And that's not to say he's a bad coach or he's never going to be a good head coach or he wouldn't be a good fit for the Bucks down the line or wouldn't have been a good fit earlier. But more my point is that it just clearly didn't mesh. Giannis clearly didn't love him as much as he loved coaches in the past, like Jason Kidd or Budenholzer. And in today's NBA with the stars drive the league, you have to have your star player believe in the coach for the organization to find success. And so they get rid of Budenholzer after last season, which I know the story about his brother uh, passing away during the series kind of sucks for the optics of it, but at the end of the day, losing in the first round hurts, even if it is to the Miami Heat. And as a one seed going down to the eight seed, that's really hard to live down. So I didn't hate the firing at the end of the day. Um, but it's clear as we look back, AJ Griffin was not the right guy. And they moved on where they had to, do so, which I don't hate. I don't hate cutting bait early. I think the Nets should have done that with Steve Nash in their first season. They probably still have Kevin Durant in Brooklyn right now. But the issue I have is that Doc Rivers was the pivot, and nothing against Doc Rivers. I think he's coached some good teams. I mean, he coached the championship Boston Celtics. There were some good 76ers teams in there, good Clippers teams in there. But I liken it to when the 20 was it 2016 Cavs, is that right? When they came back down 3-1. They fired David Blatt early in the season, and they brought in Tyronn Lue and they went on to win the title. And we look back at that. David Blatt was fired very quickly, very similar to AJ Griffin. But we can look back at that decision and say it was genius. Tyronn Lue not only won them a championship, he's proven to be a very, very good head coach. He's turned the Clippers, I mean, and the Clippers have a lot of talent, but he's turned them around. I mean, they were a laughing stock in the early days of the James Harden trade. He's turned them around, and they're possibly the best team in the West, if not the Nuggets. He's proven to be a very good head coach. And David Blatt, I believe he's an athletic assistant at the University of Arizona or something like that. Um, so a smart decision for them. Nothing against David Platt, right? Maybe this all would have worked out differently. No judgment. But more of my point is that at the end of the day, they made a smart decision. And the Bucks, are they getting their Tyronn Lue? Are they getting the best coach in the NBA? And granted, or one of the better coaches, should I say, in the NBA? Granted, that didn't look like the right move at the time for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Tyronn Lue had a stint in Washington, I believe, where he was really awful, but he was most known for getting stepped over, right, by Allen Iverson. Um, but he ended up being the right choice. And so is Doc Rivers one of the best coaches in the NBA? No, I don't think so. I think he's averaged at best, in my opinion. But could it end up being the right decision? Maybe. Maybe average at best is better than what AJ Griffin was providing for the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know. But the I'm not going to blame Doc Rivers for signing with the Bucks. I mean, obviously that's a better gig than being in the broadcast booth, in my opinion. I don't completely blame the Bucks for hiring Doc Rivers. What I blame is ESPN, because ESPN let go of Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. It broke up the best broadcast booth in sports, in my opinion, of Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, and Mark Jackson. They were a trio that joked with each other, that had years of experience, that had coaching and playing experience, and from multiple perspectives of life. And I really enjoyed the booth and their banter and their analysis, and they really filled each other's gaps well in conversation and in analysis. And ESPN moved on from Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson in the name of uh, concern that Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson would find coaching opportunities and leave the booth. And in reality, I think what it was is Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson were a little too critical of the NBA. But that's neither here nor there. We don't know that to be true. It really looks bad when the replacement for that was Doris Burke and Doc Rivers, and then Doc Rivers leaves half a season early to go coach the Milwaukee Bucks. There wasn't enough due diligence here. So now your booth is Mike Breen and Doris Burke, which, I mean, I like Doris Burke at times when she's not incredibly biased. Um, Mike Breen's obviously goated, but I just don't love the idea of a two-person booth with Doris Burke being your only color commentator as the best finals option when you just got rid of the best booth in sports, in my opinion. I mean, you could make an argument for Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. I think that's a solid one. I think Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth are underrated. Um, there's some baseball booths out there that I think are really good. Krug and Kuip for the San Francisco Giants are really great. There's radio booths out there that I think are really great. As a Yankees fan, I'm biased towards John Sterling and and Susan Waldman. But in terms of national sports coverage, this is the best options that are out there. It's either you could you could make a case for Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, but it's Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, and Mike Breen with play by play. And you moved on from that in the name of coaching potential, and then your guy's gone for a coaching job halfway through the year. It's just an awful look for ESPN. And nothing against ESPN, right? I say this, I mean, I've qualified about every negative statement I've had in this video. Nothing against ESPN in terms of an overall company, but this was a very poor decision. And it really is disappointing because as someone who is really into the commentary of sports, who will either be very excited and leave the commentary on for good booths and or mute the game for bad booths, I didn't think Doc Rivers and Doris Burke were doing a great job, but I wanted to give them time to kind of, meld and figure it out. And now they don't have that because Doc Rivers is gone. And I think it's really disappointing and it's really going to suck. At the end of the day, I think the best solution is bringing Van Gundy and Mark Jackson back, but we know that's not going to happen. So I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think ESPN messed up big time? Do you think the NBA still has to figure out the situation with stars being marketed so heavily in games that they might miss? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Appreciate you watching and for sticking to this lots of thoughts, quick thoughts video with my voice the way it is. So thanks for watching. Peace out.